Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name's Dan Martin. I'm Head of Content at Enterprise Nation, and welcome to today's live webinar. I know I have to say it as it's today. Happy Referendum Day, but I promise we're not going to talk about that. We're here to talk about pensions, and I'm delighted to say we're joined by Romi, who's from PensionBee, which is one of a new disruptive startups in this pension space, who is here to give you all the advice you need to know about what you need to do to get a pension if you're self-employed or you're an entrepreneur. So we're going to have a 15-minute or so conversation, and then it will be over to you for questions. So if you've got any questions at all while we're chatting, then just post it into the question box, and we'll get on to them at the end. So Romi, first of all, welcome to the webinar.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you very much for joining us. So first of all, I'd like to before we get on to the practical advice, I'd like to know a bit more about you and PensionBee, really. So where did the idea for PensionBee come from, and why did you decide to set it up?
Sure. So PensionBee is an online pension manager, and we help people to find and combine their old pensions into a good value plan managed by two of the world's biggest investment managers. So we started the business about 2 years ago, shortly after I left Morgan Stanley, which is a very traditional corporate finance provider. So I was always quite familiar with the financial services sector, but had never quite experienced it as a consumer until I had to move my own pension. And it was just so difficult to find a provider who would take me on, to pick an investment, to figure out what my fees actually were, that, I just thought there's got to be a better way. And that's how the idea came about. And, the more people we spoke to in the community, the more we realized, everybody has a pension problem, and we're just really here to sort it out.
Fantastic. So, I mean, it might seem an obvious question really to start with, but sometimes with the self-employed, pension is more seen as a workers' thing. So, why should the self-employed be thinking about getting a pension? Isn't the state pension provision enough for them?
No, it's absolutely not enough. So, under the current rules, retirees will receive about £8,000 a year only. And we think that, a much better income to aspire to in retirement is closer to about £30,000. So clearly there's a very big gap between what the government is set to provide and what you actually want to be able to have the retirement that you're actually going to enjoy. And of course, over time, the situation might even become worse because government benefits are becoming less generous. And self-employed in particular, it's really important that you take care of your own situation, because I'm sure you're familiar with the auto-enrollment laws, but these days all company workers are able to receive a pension plan from their employers, and so about 50% of people who are actually working are saving into a pension provided by their company. But amongst the self-employed, that number is a lot lower. It's only about 20%. And so we think it's really, really important that the self-employed, take control of the situation, because your business is probably not a very safe bet for retirement. You've put so much of your life and so much of your hopes into your own company that you really want to put aside something else, something that's not related to your business. And a pension can be a very, very good other thing to have, because it gives you diversification, so your eggs aren't in one basket, and there's some really generous tax relief from the government. So for every £8 you put in, the government adds another £2 in the form of tax relief. And a good pension provider will simply claim that on your behalf, and no other investment can do that for you. No, not property, not ISAs, not anything else.
Bit of a no-brainer, really. That's a good place to start. But what are the? I mean, you said there that compared to traditional employees, the self-employed entrepreneurs, they're not saving as much. So, what apart from that, and them not actually doing it, what are the key challenges you think that the self-employed specifically face when on the pensions front?
Well, I think a lot of it comes down to figuring out who is the right provider for you. you know, choosing where to actually put the money itself. So what should the investment be? You know, figuring out how much you should pay into the pension can often seem very, very complicated. And then generally, you know, there's all sorts of other challenges in the pensions market, you know, generally being so confusing and full of jargon. So I think in many ways the self-employed, you know, face similar problems to everybody else in the UK when it comes to pensions, but there's no kind of, you know, I guess paternalistic company who's going to try and sort it out for you. You've got to sort it out yourself.
So once we're hoping that lots of the people that are listening to this, that's a good first step. So they're obviously up for taking on that challenge and solving it. So once the self-employed, you know, they've decided they need this pension, what are the key things they should bear in mind, you know, when trying to find the provider that's right for them?
Well, I think, you know, the first thing you want to consider is how trustworthy is this company. Because, you know, it's really important to get that right. You know, you are handing over money to somebody who's going to be managing it on your behalf, and you have to look through to who that person actually is. So at PensionBee, we work with two of the biggest investment managers in the world, BlackRock and State Street, who have been around, you know, since the 80s and I think the 1700s, respectively. And so, you know, they really have that experience of being able to manage money. And I think when you're choosing a provider, it's important to find somebody with that experience who you can trust. So that would be, you know, probably my first kind of, you know, thing to watch out for. I think, you know, the second thing is probably control. And this is the thing, you know, that everybody complains about when it comes to the pension sector, that it feels like, you know, you're handing over money with the hope that you will see it later. And that's, you know, it really shouldn't be like that. So a good pension provider will provide you transparency over what your money is doing. So most pension providers have this wonderful annual cycle of sending you a 30-page document with lots of confusing information once a year in the post. And we just think that, you know, you want to find a provider who lets you log in and see your balance at any time when it's convenient for you, and not when it's, you know, convenient for them. So, you know, definitely look for someone who provides you that control. I think, you know, for the self-employed in particular, you want to find someone who makes contributing easy. So most pension companies are set up to take in monthly contributions, so a regular commitment to, you know, to pay money into the pension. And if you can do that, that's great. It's a very, you know, stable and disciplined way to save. But for many people who are self-employed, your cash flow is actually quite different on a monthly basis. And so there may be months where you really want to contribute, and there may be months where you don't actually want to contribute. And so you want to find a pension provider who makes one-off contributions, something that's really, really easy to do. So definitely, you know, watch out if, you know, how flexible is the provider in terms of contributions. And then I would say, finally, you want to watch out for fees. And, you know, the financial services sector in general is very good at hiding fees, but it's important that you pick a plan that is good value. And I don't necessarily mean the cheapest, because cheapest is not always the best, but you want to pick someone who is not taking out, you know, too much of your pension pot for them, because that's not what the pension is for. The pension is there for you in order to be able to grow over time. So the average fee in the market right now is about 1%. We are between 0.5 and 0.7%. And I think you definitely want to make sure that you're on the right side of the average, so that you're not getting overcharged.
Fantastic, some brilliant advice there. Loads of stuff there that I'm sure has provoked some questions as well. So I've got a couple more questions for Romi. If you've got any that you'd like to ask, post it in the question box, and I promise we'll get to them. Now, I'm sure this question is asked. In fact, somebody has asked it. Just looking, how much should I save? I know that's the ultimate question. So, you know, what's your advice for working out how much you should be putting in?
Well, unfortunately, the answer is it depends. but here's what you can do to figure it out. So the first thing you want to know is, how much do I have right now? So how much have I put aside already? The second thing you want to know is, how much do I want when I retire? And the difference between those two numbers, so how much you have right now and how much you want when you retire, will guide you as to how much you need to save today. So let's start with the first part. So the first thing you need to do is figure out how much you have. And for that, it's a good idea to combine all of your old pensions into one place. So that's what we do at PensionBee, and it shows you your balance as it is today. The next thing you want to do is see, well, based on my balance, let's say I've saved £15,000. Based on my balance, what does that mean when I retire at age, let's say 65? Well, it probably means, based on that balance, that you'll get £1,000 of income, which is not enough. So you want to think, okay, well, if that gives me £1,000, then how much more do I need to add in order to get to my goal of, say, £30,000? And the best way to do that is to use a calculator. So at PensionBee, for example, we have a calculator that links your current balance and shows you how much you're projected to get based on your current balance. And if you want to add new contributions, what difference will that make to your ultimate amount that you get when you retire? So you want to work out those numbers so that you can see, how much do I need to add in order to get that target retirement income that I want. So obviously, if you don't have access to the PensionBee calculator, it's always good to have a rule of thumb. And our, general guidance, I would say, is that if you can afford to put aside about 15% of your salary, then that's a really, really good starting point.
I mean, Nicola has come in with a question as you were talking there. I mean, she said, is there a maximum that can be saved in a year, or is it as much as you want, I guess?
Well, there is an annual allowance that the government has set, and it depends really on whether you are earning UK-based income. So let's say you are. In that situation, the maximum amount you can put in is the higher, is the lower of £40,000 or your annual salary.
Right. Okay. Brilliant. I hope that helps you, Nicola, there with the question. We've also had a question in about when I was asking you about how to select a pension provider. You mentioned like find one that's trustworthy, and Sally has asked, but how do I know that they're trustworthy? What's your advice for finding a trustworthy one?
Sure. So I think the most important thing to do is to look through who is actually managing the money. So there will often be various different brokers in the market, various different companies that provide you, access to many different money managers. So you want to figure out who is the person actually managing the money. So let's say you've done that. Then the next thing you want to ask yourself is, well, how long has this company been around? Do they have experience managing money on behalf of other people? Or is this the first time they're really doing this? In which case, they may be great, but they just don't have that experience and that history. So, you definitely want to take a look at that. Another benchmark that's often looked at is how much money is this company managing? So in our particular instance, I think, BlackRock and State Street manage trillions of pounds of assets on behalf of governments, companies, and individuals. So that gives you a sense as to, how much experience they have, how much money they've been able to take in on behalf of others. And so that, to me, is an indicator of trust.
That's brilliant advice. I hope that has helped. Another question from Liz, who's asked, if a freelancer saves into a personal pension, what happens if you can't keep up the payments when you have a poor month's performance?
Well, that really comes back to my point about finding a provider who's flexible in terms of your contributions. So most providers are set up for you to make regular payments. And I suspect if you want to cancel those regular payments, you can, but it's a bit of a hassle because, you have to really think about it and make sure that you've canceled it, and then you have to set it up again, which is a pain. And so what you want to find is a provider who allows you to make one-off contributions. So if you've had a really good month and you want to make a contribution in that month, then you can simply log in, and in a couple of clicks, you can add how much you want to add. And you can do that on a monthly basis, or you can do it on a weekly basis, depending on how often it suits you. So that's one of the things, we find really important at PensionBee, because not everybody is ready to make that regular monthly commitment.
And often, particularly new small businesses, like that question shows, you never know what's going to happen in month to month.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I was going to ask you a question about, what do you think the government could be doing more, to specifically on pensions and the self-employed? And somebody has asked, and I don't know whether you want to comment on it, but I knew it was going to come in. Do you think the referendum result will have an impact? So, what are your thoughts on, sort of government support and how they could improve the situation for the self-employed?
So, government support. Well, I think that there are already some very attractive tax benefits for the self-employed to take advantage of. So, the first and the most important is tax relief when you contribute. So for every £8 you put in, the government will add another 2. And a good pension provider will claim that on your behalf. So you don't even need to do anything in order to get it. And that's a really, really nice thing. So I do think the government has, already provided something there. There's other tax benefits, but I won't kind of go into all of those right now. I think what they could really do better is explain how you can benefit. And I was actually at 10 Downing Street about a week ago talking about a cheat sheet. Wouldn't it be nice if we could have just one page that the government has issued for the self-employed, telling them the key things they need to know about pensions? Because I think the biggest frustration is that when you try to find out the information, you're just sort of bombarded with tax language, accounting language, and all this other jargon that doesn't really get to the point. And so I think one of the things they can do is really clear that up, because there are some great benefits, and I think the self-employed should be aware of them, and then decide if they want to take advantage.
Yeah, I was wondering whether you were going to mention that meeting, because I know you came along with some other friends of Enterprise Nation, and that's a great idea you had there for the government. Maybe don't want to comment, but what do you think about the referendum result, whatever way it goes? Do you think that you got any thoughts, maybe personally, on what impact it could have in your area? Or it can be a no comment if you'd rather not.
Well, I mean, I think, pensions in particular is a very UK-based issue. And so, it's regulated on a national level. Tax relief occurs on a national level as well. And so, whether we're in or whether we're out, I think it's really important for people to take control of their pension situation. Now, one of the things I worry about is if we go out and companies start relocating, or decide to simply make big changes, what we find is that a lot of the pension records that they have actually go into complete and total disarray. And so we've been trying to tell our customers that if you haven't found your old pensions and sorted it out and put them together, you want to do it before anything major happens, because if they're with a company that changes headquarters, or they're sponsored by an employer who decides to move or who decides to close down, then you may lose administrative access to that money, which is yours. So we've really been encouraging people to take control before there's a huge mess that hits. So that's definitely one thing to watch out for if we do decide to leave. But I think, whether we're in or whether whether we're out, I think it's really, really important to, to save, because, it is still, it's your future. It's 30 years from now. I don't know what the impact of Brexit would be 30 years from now. I won't speculate on that. But I still think it will be very important for you to save, because I don't think that state pension is going to get any bigger.
That's brilliant. That's a fantastic answer. So there's something to do for your referendum day. Is also think about the pensions when you're putting that cross in the box if you haven't done it already. So a question on from Harry on you mentioned it about switching, like existing. If I have an existing fund, is it possible to transfer to a new provider such as PensionBee? And maybe to widen that question, how easy is it to do that?
Sure. Yeah. No, it's definitely possible. So you have a statutory right to transfer your pension, and so lots of people aren't aware of that right. And we think it's really, really important for people to know so that they can find the best provider for them. So yes, definitely possible. In terms of how easy it is, well, it depends on the provider, as always. But if it's a defined contribution pension, which means which is another lovely jargon word created by the pension industry, but it effectively means it's a pension that doesn't have any guarantees for annual income. So some pensions have guarantees, some pensions don't have guarantees from an employer. So the BHS pension, for example, is a defined benefit pension that comes with guarantees. PensionBee is a defined contribution pension that doesn't come with an employer's guarantee. So that latter type is pretty easy to transfer. And so if you do have a defined contribution plan and you know your reference number and your estimated balance, we can do that really easily for you. If you know that you have a pension there, but you're not quite sure of the reference number and what the balance is, well, then we can help you with that as well. So we help people to find their old pensions based on where they worked in the past. And it's a bit of a waiting game, really. We just have to wait to hear from your past employer and from your and from that pension provider in order to find it. But then once it's found, you can transfer it relatively easily. So that's defined contribution pensions. Defined benefit pensions, which is like the BHS pension, can be a lot harder to move out. If you have a defined benefit pension of over £30,000, then you will require financial advice from a specialist before you move it. And so that can make it a bit trickier. But either way, it's important for you to consider, where do I want my money to be? And so I definitely recommend taking a look. And obviously, we're very happy to help.
Do you find that's quite common that there's lots of people that maybe actually that were previously had a traditional job and then have started their own business and then have completely lost details of all their pensions? Is that quite a common thing that you come across?
Yes, and I'm one of them. It's definitely something that we see pretty often, because you'll spend a couple of years working for a company, gaining experience, and then you'll have a great idea of something that you can build that's really your own, and it's impactful to the world because you're making it, and it's very, very exciting. And in all that excitement, you leave your company, you start your business, and often the pension just sits there. So the number to think about there is that when people leave a company, about 80% of them leave their pension there. And so it's definitely quite a common problem.
I'm one of them as well, so you've made me think. Simon has asked about fees. He said, your point about fees scares me. What hidden fees should I look out for when looking for a plan?
Oh my gosh, there's many. So lots of providers have fortunately cleaned their act up, thanks to government regulation, but many are still charging hidden fees. So I think the most popular fee, and fortunately it's usually not too hidden, is the annual management charge. So at PensionBee, we charge between 0.5 and 0.7%, and we're very transparent and open about that. You know, with many other companies, you know, you might struggle to find that number. So you definitely want to check what is the annual management fee, and ideally you want a provider who is all-inclusive. So that annual management fee should, you know, should take into account, you know, no extra charges when you want to make contributions. There shouldn't be any extra fund fees. That's often the one that's the most hidden. So a company will tell you that it charges 0.5% plus any fees on the underlying fund, which is a very, very bizarre way to price products, because when I shop at Sainsbury's, it doesn't tell me, oh yes, this is the price, and then this other thing that you need to find as well. So you know, ideally you want to see this all-inclusive and include the product charge, the platform charge, and the underlying fund charge, and that's the way we've structured our product. So that's kind of, you know, a bit of information on that. Some of the really, really sneaky ones, I would say, are new contribution fees, which makes absolutely no sense to me. So this is when you say, I want to contribute into my pension, and the provider says, great, we'll charge you for that. Which makes absolutely no sense. So watch out for those. And then, you know, there can also be pound-based administration fees, which can seem small, but really, really add up over time. So some providers will tell you, oh yes, and we'll charge you about £12 in administration per month. And, you know, you think, hold on, you know, that's actually quite, you know, a large amount of money if I think about it over 30 years that you're charging me over there. So, you know, try and find a provider that's all-inclusive so that you don't have to add up all of those numbers on a regular basis.
I guess you've got to do a lot of research and search those terms and conditions, because, like you said, not all of the companies out there are probably as transparent as, you know, your PensionBee is. And the interesting question, it sort of again comes back to the government really, but when will, and this is again anything you've heard, but when will portfolio workers, people who have a number of part-time jobs, be able to contribute to an auto-enrollment pension and benefit from employer and government contributions? I mean, is that a kind of thing that one of the things you'd like to call on the government to help with?
I think that would be extremely beneficial. I mean, you know, we have people at PensionBee who are not, you know, full-time workers here, and they are, you know, incredibly important members of our team. So we actually, you know, see them in exactly the same way. I think to not afford these people the same rights when it comes to a pension is a bit strange. But unfortunately, I haven't really heard kind of any government moves in that direction. I may have missed some, but, you know, usually they're quite loud when they do happen. So, you know, hopefully it will be soon. And, you know, the other thing that we would support is an increase in the rate of contributions that are being made by individuals and by their employers, because as it currently stands, the legislation, you know, encourages people to put in about 8% of their salary, and we think that number should be much closer to 15%. So, you know, we would support a move in that direction as well.
Well, hopefully your presence in number 10 recently has got them thinking, and you know, moves will happen.
Well, yes.
Exactly. Well, we've only got about a minute to go, so I'd like to sort of finish just by, you know, you talking about what do you hope to, you know, you sort of, as I said, you're sort of disrupting the pensions industry. What do you sort of hope to achieve with PensionBee, and then finally, you know, how can people get in touch with you?
I mean, I think, you know, my personal objective is to make pensions as easy as possible for people, because I think for way too long the financial services sector has just overcomplicated matters and really created products that are, you know, maybe good for them but not really good for everybody else. And so we really, really want to change that and get as many people saving into a good pension as we can. So, you know, that's definitely our objective. If you want to get in touch with us, we are totally online. We are at www.pensionbee.com, and we're also very happy to chat on the phone. So, you know, come to our website, give us a call. You know, we're very help.
Fantastic. Well, Romi, that was brilliant. I mean, if you're looking for some more advice, we're working with PensionBee on some content that's already on our blog. So if you go to the enterpriseNation.com blog and search PensionBee, you'll find a brilliant guide to self-employment and pensions, which sums up a lot of what we've talked about. And then you can more details on how to get in touch. Well, Romi, thank you very much for that. That was so fantastic. Lots covered in that half an hour, and I'm sure we've got some self-employed now who are going to be getting ready to get a new pension on referendum day and thinking about the future. But I'll let you get on with the rest of your referendum day, and we'll speak again soon. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thanks, Dan. Bye now.
Goodbye.